There's only so many times you can photograph your partner.
Yeah.
In the house.
Right. Yeah.
I've even resorted to photographing and making these little things.
Okay.
Wow.
Which is
Yeah.
completely out of my normal realm of work, but I'm actually quite enjoying it, to be honest with you.
Cool.
So, but I don't know for how much longer. That's the only thing.
Right. So I did start recording, so everyone knows that I am recording this today. So people who can't make it will be able to view it. So I just want to make that clear. Yep. It's interesting about censorship. It seems like there is no censorship. You can go on TV and you hear everything. So there is no.
Yeah.
Sometimes it feels like, you can go to the bookstore and you can pick up a book and it's just full of curse words. And it's like, that didn't happen 20 years ago, right? And so,
yeah, definitely.
It is interesting about censorship.
I've one thing to make things easier, because feedback's been great. Hopefully tonight's will be. But I've actually been working with have you heard of Calendly? It's like
the calendar app.
Right, so I've kind of added that onto the website, so that should be live later on today. So it makes it easier, because it did get a little bit confusing because I got inundated, and then that's why I asked you the other day, do you know this guy? And
right.
No, and yeah,
okay.
I could, being a typical bloke, I was struggling to multitask. So.
All right. Yeah, I'm glad that worked out. I was a little concerned. I was going to just go south or no, but
no.
I'm glad.
Once we booked it in, we booked it in.
Great. Appreciate that. Yeah, I appreciate. It's again, the technology. Never thought I'd be able to speak to you in this way. So
I think this is fantastic. What a great use of technology.
Right. I do have your book here.
Hey, look at that.
Yep. So, and I do I've listened to your podcast. But I used to listen to, on the way to work, I would listen to podcasts, photography podcasts. I listen to all of them. Anything I get my hands on photography-wise, photography podcasts.
So after all that, you still booked me in, my Lord.
Yeah, of course. No, that's great. We can, again, the technology to be able to do this.
Yeah. Yeah, it's clever stuff.
Well, we got 14 people showed up. So this is actually our second webinar. The first time, people kind of freaked out about, I guess the Zoom app. There was an article in the New York Times about the FBI was investigating their security.
Yeah.
Had a bunch of issues, and
so
I went to using the WebEx, and that worked out pretty good. But I think it's, obviously it's more geared to business, and I don't think it's quite as easy to use.
I think Zoom. For one thing, I wish I'd brought shares in them before all this happened.
Oh yeah, definitely.
But I think since they've been used a heck of a lot more than they ever were. It's obviously since we've all been living the way we are now. Right. It almost seems to me like every single day that I log onto it, there is a new security feature of some sort. So they're clearly working on it. And I think if you're looking at vulnerabilities, I think pretty much any facility that allows you to do this is
sure. I think you froze. There you go. You there, Gwen? Hello, Kim.
Hello.
Are you there, Gwen? I can hear you.
Yeah.
Okay. It froze a little bit, but you're okay.
All right, cool. I think if it's just to check in with you, David, what we'll do, because I'm going to kind of flip back between a presentation, and then we'll have a bit of a break, I'm sure, 5-minute break or whatever. Then I'll do some retouching. When if you are going to mute folks, could I ask that you don't mute yourself? Because I will say, David, can you see what we should be seeing? Just so I know that you can, and you can hear me as well. So.
Okay. Yeah, I would suggest everyone else try to move there, so we don't have a lot of distractions going on. So, but otherwise, I think we'll maybe give a couple of minutes for people to show up. But we are 15 people showed up, so that's good. We had 10 people on. The password, okay. I guess got a message that someone's looking for the password on the. Oops. 1 second.
I just put one.
Someone else can do it for me. I don't care. At this point, we can share that on the Meetup. I'm trying to find the Meetup. The Meetup app is not very good, but yeah. Thanks, Kim.
Yeah, I just put it.
Thanks, Kim.
I know you put it, but I didn't pay attention to, so I look for it too.
Okay, appreciate it.
Hey, David, since I missed the information about how to send you some money, you might want to mention that.
Okay, yeah. Glenn is doing this essentially for free, pro bono, I guess. But he is asking for donations to his organization. Maybe Glenn can.
Yeah, it's. I just thought rather than because this is, you know, we're all doing this from the comfort of our own homes.
Right.
I didn't want to charge for me to be paid to do this, but all I was basically saying was because for some months now I've been raising money for veterans. Primarily it was surviving World War II veterans, but obviously there's many veterans now of all kind of ages, and I've been working for months to try and raise money to support them, because there are some folks who are going through some really tough times.
Sure.
But even more so now, you know what I mean,
yeah.
with all this, the situation we've got in. So it was just to say, look, there'll be a link, just anything. And I literally, when I kind of announced this video, I'll show you the video later, but the video is basically to say, look, at the moment, all I would ask is that if you possibly could donate the price of a coffee that you can't go out for. That's all I'm asking. Do you know what I mean? We're not looking for hundreds. It's just literally $2.50 or whatever it would cost for a coffee when you go out. Just donate that if you can do, because that can go a long way towards helping veterans. Because we've got, you know, all sorts of issues. We've got, like before I came out now, I'd literally just dropped over to a place about 30 minutes from me. There's a former World War II veteran who was a former Spitfire pilot, and I kind of see him every week, or I was doing, taking him out for a cup of tea and a bit of cake, and but just getting him his essentials, you know, because he's 99 years of age now. He can't go out. He's in a very dangerous group, obviously, with his age.
Oh yeah.
So we do what we can.
Yeah, I appreciate that.
Yeah, that's nice of you to do that. I appreciate it too.
Thank you, Dee. And that's kind of what I'm gonna go through. I guess you folks will be okay with this, but we're gonna go through. It's like literally two parts to this. One would be a talk, kind of like a presentation on projects and the importance of projects and how they've kind of helped me. And I want to talk to you about this project that I've been working on for some time now on the veterans and how I do it. We'll look at how we do the photography for it, because it's always on location in the most awkward of locations you could possibly be. And then a little bit of a leg stretch, and then come out and just go through some researching. And if anybody's got any questions, as long as they're not too personal, we can do those as well.
That's good. Appreciate that. So, well, we got about 19 people in. We got 20. So
that's pretty good.
Yeah, Glenn, I think whenever you feel like you're ready, you want me to write a little bio on you, or you just want to jump in and?
Yeah, I can cover all that.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't want to bore people too. It's early. I don't want to make people go sleepy again. All right, well, folks. First of all, obviously you know that David kind of saw the message that I posted out about wanting to do these camera club kind of talks, because this is a very strange time we're all living in at the minute, and I think clubs are an important part of what we do anyway when we get together with our friends and whatever. You can keeping in contact with everybody and learning and stuff like that. But I think we need that more than ever now, because I don't know about you folks, but when you're locked in for so long, you can start to get a little bit of cabin fever, and you just need that something just to take your mind off just living within those four walls, you know? So I think this technology like this is just fantastic for this. But if you have no idea who I am, UK-based photographer, you probably tell that from the accent anyway, but UK-based, I am a portrait photographer. I'm over in the States quite a lot ordinarily, teaching quite a bit over in the States and across Europe as well. And this is what I do. This is what I do for a living. I'm a photographer, but I obviously do the teaching. You can see there that David also had one of the books that I've done. So I just thought it'd be really good to have a bit of a catch up, nice and relaxed kind of catch up. But I'm going to put a presentation up and we'll go through some slides just to kind of give you an idea of something that's massively helped me when it came to my photography, because I don't think I'm any different to anybody else here, but when I first started photography, I didn't have a clue what it was I wanted to do. I knew that I kind of wanted to do it for business. Do you know what I mean? Because I really did enjoy it. And they say that if you do something that you really enjoy, you never work another day in your life. Possibly true.
Right.
But I knew that I wanted to do that, but I didn't know what I wanted to do. I didn't know if I was a wedding photographer, food photographer, portrait photographer, you name it. I just did not know. But I was told to go out there and do everything. Because if you go out there and try everything, you'll very quickly realize what it is that you don't like to do.
Right.
And then that will leave what you do like to do. And I am, portrait photographer. But I want to kind of give you a bit of a background as to something that was taught to me very, very soon on. I've become friends with a guy I think you may have heard of him, a guy called Joel Grimes, who's a photographer based out in the States. It's a very good friend of mine. And within a very short time of me starting, I remember Joel saying to me, you must have personal projects. You must. Because I think what I used to do was I had my full-time job, and then I would look forward to the weekends. And I think, great, I can get my camera in my hands and I can go out and do some photography. So, I'd look forward to maybe Saturday. I'd probably book a time in a studio. I'd book 4 hours in a studio, and I'd organize for somebody to come along. Hopefully they would turn up. And then when we got there, within 15 minutes, I'd kind of run out of ideas. Because posing people was difficult, but I'd kind of go through this peaks and troughs of excitement. Times when I'd be doing something, I'd get it done, and then I'd go back down again thinking, now what do I do? Do you know what I mean? You have to keep constantly having to think about the next picture. But Joel said to me, if you have a project where it's an ongoing series of pictures, a minimum of 20 pictures in that series, the difference is outstanding. And true to form, that is exactly the case when it comes to this, because and you'll see as we go through the presentation, one of the things is that when you do work on a project where you are looking to create a series of pictures, the benefits are massive. They really are. But one of them is that it's always in your mind. You're thinking about it even when you're not thinking about it. And I'll show you a perfect example of that in a second. But let me just bring up this presentation now. So I'm going to share my screen. Let's have a look here. So I'm going to share my screen. And David, I need you to tell me what you're going to see. I'm not going to tell you what it is,
Right.
but just so I know that you can see what you should see, let's just try this. So tell me what you can see at the moment.
Yes, I see the logo.
See the logo. Okay, yep. So far so good. So now tell me now what you can see.
Yeah, I see personal projects.
So it's a nice big blue screen. Right, fantastic. Right, we're up and running then.
Cool.
Okay, right. So one thing I'll say is when you're going to do a project, you'll probably find, in fact, I can guarantee you'll find, that the first project you try to do or start working on will not be the project that you really do go for. There'll always be like an interim kind of project. And when I kind of first started out, I started out in this whole industry as a retoucher. So I used to work for an agency that did work for the BBC and for Sky. So I'd be working on the advertising pictures and stuff. But my personal projects, I thought, I know what I think I'm going to recreate pictures that are from films or TV programs that I used to really love when I was a kid. And one of them was a program or film rather called The Lion, the Witch and the Wardrobe. So I thought, I'm going to recreate a picture like that. So I kind of went through the process of trying to find, let's just drag that over there. I was trying to find a location. I thought, well, it's got to be done on location. See if I can find a stately home. So down the road from me, maybe 20 minutes away, this beautiful big stately home called Blenheim Palace. I thought, right, let's go and see how much I can hire a room in that place for to get this big, big wardrobe that the children would have gone into Narnia, that kind of place. But within minutes of me finding out how much that room was going to cost me, it made me realize I won't be doing that. So then I kind of went online and I started to look at how do they do this in the films? And it was amazing to see that so much of it is done as miniatures. Do you know what I mean? There's a lot of this miniature kind of work. So I thought, right, in that case, then I'm going to go online to a doll's house suppliers, and I found miniature of everything. So I found rolls of paper that looked like floorboards and spray glue, and rolls of paper that looked like wallpaper, and miniature skirting board and what have you. I found a miniature wardrobe. And I kind of got this box from the supermarket, and I started to kit it all out to make it look like a room. And I thought, right, how can I make this look like a full-size room? but what would the light be like if the moon was coming in? So you can see from on the screen there, there's just you can see on the left-hand side of the box, I've cut out some kind of square holes like a shape of a window. And I would shine a torch in from the side of the box to see what would the light look like when it came in. Bearing in mind now, this is a few years ago. I was still kind of not knowing who I am, what I am when it comes to photography. Didn't really understand lighting or anything like that. So I started to play around with that. So I kind of thought, well, it's looking good. And then I went to go and see a friend of mine called Dave Clayton, who's a guy I do a podcast with, and his two daughters. I said, I'm going to come round early. Don't let them get changed out of their bedclothes. And I'll come and photograph them for this picture where you won't see their faces, but you'll just see the back of them. So I thought, well, if these children are going to be reaching up to hold the door of this wardrobe, I put a light stand in front of them. So they actually had something to hold on to. And then I thought there's going to be this mystical kind of light coming through the gap in the doors. So I put a strip light just there, just so it would get the highlights around them. So photographed them, then photographed their toys on the floor, and then just for myself, had fun putting this together. Now, this isn't the kind of work I do now, but I must say, from me doing this kind of stuff, which was kind of stepping out and trying anything and everything, I'm so glad I did, because techniques that I was using and discovering back then are really helping me now. Even though I don't do the kind of picture you can see on screen, they're really, really helping me. But I carried on doing all this kind of work, taking pictures of all sorts of stuff. And you might recognize this particular person here. And sometimes when I go out, people say to me, wow, have you ever photographed any celebrities? And you go, well, yeah, there's the odd one or two. In fact, now when I photograph veterans, I say yes every time I photograph a veteran. But with this picture here, you do a bit of a build-up and you go, but he's not as big as you think he is, this guy. And then you show him this, which is just a miniature. Do you know what I mean? But I'd never used a macro lens before, so I was experimenting with the macro. But the thing with this one here, when I was working on this picture, which was for a book called Photograph Like a Thief, all to do with copying to develop your own style, what I found was with the lighting stuff, it didn't matter how big the lights were. If you were doing it full size in a studio on a real person, it translated exactly the same if you brought it down a scale, as you can see here. So I've got like a little 4 AA battery speed light up on a little stand, angled forward, and it's in front of the Arnold Schwarzenegger little model there, but it's still giving me that Rembrandt-y kind of lighting that you can see coming through onto the screen at the back there. Great fun. But do you remember I said about the fact that when you're working on a series of images or a project that has about 20 pictures minimum in it, the project's always on your mind even when you don't think it is. And this is a perfect example, because what I thought was going to be my main project was this one. And this was where I've never been on a safari. I would love to go on a safari at some point, but I love animals. And I kind of thought, well, the next best thing for me would be to visit zoos and wildlife parks and reserves and photograph animals, cut them out in Photoshop and recreate scenes to make it look as if they were free. It made me feel good, I felt like I was doing my bit. So that's what I did with these two elephants here who weren't together at the time. But the reason I tell you this little bit here is, I was driving from where I used to live through these country lanes to go and see a friend. And as I'm driving through the lanes, I see some cows in a field on the right-hand side. And one of the cows was going to the toilet. It was having a wee. And I thought, right. So I stopped my car and I thought, now that there would make a fantastic watering hole. So I got my camera at the back of the car, shooed the cows away, got down really low and took a picture of it. And then I put that watering hole in this picture. Now, I suppose now when you look at it, you think that kind of changes the whole mood of the picture when you think they're drinking from it now, knowing what it is. But you didn't, if you didn't know that, it just goes to show, really, certainly did for me, that when you are having a project that you're working on, you'll be driving around sometimes and you might be working on a portrait project with a certain kind of theme to it. You'll be driving around and all of a sudden you just go down a road and you'll see a shop and something in the shop window and you go, that would be fantastic for the project I'm working on. But a moment ago, you weren't even thinking about it. That's how powerful these kind of things can be. Another picture I took a picture of this stag and this was a beautiful sunny spring morning. And I thought, what I'll do is I'll cut it out and I'll create a traditional scene. I'll go to Scotland, photograph the mountains and do the heather and what have you. But that was a bit cliche. I thought people would expect to see that. But there's another friend of mine called Moose Peterson, American. He's an amazing landscape photographer and wildlife photographer. Also photographs aviation. Mm-hmm. And I saw a picture he did where there was a bison in a snowstorm, and it was real powerful snowstorm. So I thought maybe I could just do a snow scene with the stag, the deer stag. And that's how I ended up doing this one here. And again, by doing something different, it kind of pushed me to think about Photoshop with an attitude of what would happen if, how would I create this look? How would I do that? And that's something I've always done with Photoshop, is always had that mindset of what would happen if, rather than just kind of being very rigid and following this technique does this and this technique does that. I've always been one for experimenting. But the last kind of picture I did in this series was this one here. And this was there's a place in the UK called Monkey World, which is where it rescues chimps, apes, and what have you from all over the world that have been abused. And this was a chimp here called Zayden. Never forget her name. Her name was Zayden, and she was rescued from Spain, from being on the beach and what have you there. Now, when I took a group of friends down to this Monkey World to go and take some photographs of all the, the animals in there, it was a beautiful sunny morning, and they'd opened up the actual enclosure, and all these chimps were running out into this massive space that they have with all the climbing frames and what have you. And all these obviously have all been rescued, so this is a great place for them. But even though it was a fantastic day, this chimp here, Zayden, did not go outside. Big doors were open. She was just sat there, and she literally sat in the corner with a towel in her hands, and she was just rocking backwards and forwards like this. I mean, she seriously had some kind of mental health problem. She really did, because of the abuse that she'd had. And when I looked at her, you could see lacerations that had healed on her arms. There were cigarette burns on her shoulders, all sorts of horrible things. And I was absolutely transfixed by her. So rather than me going photographing all these, climbing and playing, I just stuck with her, and I pressed my lens right up hard against the protective glass, boosted up that ISO because it was quite dim lighting, and just took shot after shot after shot until eventually one of them was going to be sharp enough. And this was the one here. And I'm not a typical arty kind of a person. All right. I kind of very much matter of fact about my photography, but this was the first time ever that one of my own pictures made me just stop and stare. It really did. You know what I mean? And you hear so many people say that, my photos tell a story and stuff. And sometimes I kind of scratch my head and think, I don't get what the story is. I don't know what the story is. Whereas with this one here, I was so fixed on the way she looked. She looked so sad, and it just completely drew me in. And I think that was the first time ever that I started to realize how powerful pictures can be, to be honest with you. But that was like an interim kind of project for me. The main one came after I saw this film. Now, I don't know if any of you have seen this film here called Dad's Army. But this was a film that was made a couple of years ago, but it was actually like a modern day version of a TV series that used to be on in the UK called Dad's Army. And it was basically a group of people. We used to have a thing in the UK called Home Guard. I don't know if you folks had anything kind of similar in the US, but these were made up. It was during the Second World War. We had groups of people who were either too young, too old, or weren't physically capable of going and fighting with all the other colleagues across Europe and what have you. So they would remain at home to protect the shores of the UK. And they made a kind of a comedy series out of it because they were quite a comical kind of characters. So I saw this film, and completely out of the blue, I thought, I'd love to photograph people like that, real characters, real characters, interesting people, rather than me trying to tell people to, wear this and wear that and pose like this and pose like that. I thought, I want real people. So I told my friend Barry about this, and he says, well, you do realize there is a group near to where you live called the Oxfordshire Home Guard Living History Group, because I live near Oxford. Mm-hmm. What was amazing was you just do not know what's right on your doorstep. You really don't. You keep thinking you have to go. I used to think I had to drive miles, but it's literally on your doorstep. So I got in touch with this group, and these are a group of people who they meet up every 2 weeks in a little village hall, and they're all dressed like you can see on the picture there, religiously wear that kind of stuff every time they meet up. But they also go into schools, they go to shows, they go to fairs and exhibitions, and they educate people about all aspects of the Home Guard and also World War II. So they're a great, great resource. But you can imagine how many times these people have been photographed. So here I am as a photographer thinking, I want to photograph these people. Why would they think that what I'm going to do is any different to what they've had done before? So what I did was I went online and I found work of I found photographers whose work I love, absolutely love. So you've got people like the Anna Leibovitzes of this world. I love her work. And also Yusuf Karsh, who's sadly no longer with us. But Yusuf Karsh is famous for many pictures, but one in particular is this picture here of Winston Churchill. Incidentally, that picture of Winston Churchill, Winston did not want that picture taken. He was just absolutely belligerent, did not want it taken. Yusuf Karsh has got his tripod all set up. Winston's in the room next door, and he comes walking in to have his picture taken and stands in front of the camera, really not looking happy with his cigar there like this. And Yusuf Karsh just leans forward and snatches the cigar out of his mouth and takes the picture. And that's the expression he got. And I just love the thought of that with that particular picture. But the reason I grabbed these pictures together was thinking that this is classic lighting. This is beautiful photography, in my opinion. So I actually got these images on my iPad. And when I went to go and see the Home Guard, they made me stand up and give a presentation to say what I wanted to do. But rather than me kind of try to tell them what I wanted, I showed them the pictures. And I said, this is what I want to do with you, something like this. And straight away, they were like, oh, that's different. I like the look of that. Oh, yeah, I like that. And I think the reason they did that was because, I think no matter how hard I would have tried to tell them what I wanted to do, they would have still thought what I wanted to do was like what they'd already had done before, if that makes sense. So by me saying, this is what I want to do with you, they could see it and they got excited about it. So for the next 2 weeks, we spoke about getting together. I then went to see them at their next meeting where they all turned up with their clothing and what have you. But this time it was on a different level. They brought loads of equipment and artifacts and all that kind of stuff. And we set it up and we started to take pictures. And this was the first time I'd been taking these kind of photos. Really, really simple stuff. Because if you think about the pictures of Winston Churchill there, the Queen, and there was Sir Patrick Stewart and Sir Ian McKellen, very simple lighting on those, one light source. So that's what I started to do, just experimenting with it. And it was just such good fun. It really was good fun. It's like every day was a school day when I'd go to see them. I mean, I didn't realize, we have a saying in the UK, you may have it, where you say, oh, put a sock in it. When someone's just going on and on and on, you say, put a sock in it. Now, I didn't realize that saying came from in the 1940s when you used to have the old gramophone players, you know, the big sort of like, you know, big sounds coming out, and they had no volume control. So to dampen down the volume, they literally would put a sock in it. So that's where the saying come from. I thought that was just fantastic. But you can see here's an example of the setup. Really, really simple. Grey paper on the background, one simple light source, and you can see there that's coming slightly further forward. I'll explain a little bit about that in a minute for those of you who don't know, but really, really simple. And I did this again and again and again. And what I kind of realized at this point here was that whereas before, when I'd be looking to do pictures of people, I almost kind of had in my head that every time I do a picture, I've got to change something with the lighting, with the setup, because I can't keep doing the same thing because all my pictures will look the same. But that's not necessarily the case, because not only did we photograph them indoors, we also went outdoors. And with the folks here, exactly the same lighting, the same light, the same modifier, and in the same kind of position where it's further forward of them and coming back and down at an angle, exactly the same. So these pictures here are using the same light as you saw when that lad was there, sat there at the table leaning forward. And I kind of say to people, look, do these pictures that I'm showing you so far, do they all look the same? And they don't. You know, I think it's fair to say they don't look the same, but the lighting is. It goes to show that it's the content, not the technicals really, that go to make the massive difference. Now, one of the pictures I did as well was this one here. Again, this was just me keeping myself excited and interested in my photography rather than just doing what clients want me to do. And I organised this photo shoot here, we did this in Cardiff in Wales at the Central Railway Station on a Saturday. So you can imagine, busy, really busy. And a friend of mine had organised permits so that we could do this. And when we turn up, he'd forgotten the permit and the person he'd spoken to wasn't working. So straight away they goes, oh no, you can't do your pictures today. It's Saturday, you know, people are shopping, it's too busy. And they said, what's it for anyway? And I said, it's 1940s photo shoot. And that was it. Complete change of mind. Couldn't do enough for me. So they literally closed a staircase coming off one of the platforms, and they put barriers around and had two of their security guys with orange reflective tabards on, keeping all the public back. Well, I'm taking a picture just for myself. It was just insane. But you had members of the public watching going, oh, look at him. Isn't he lovely? It was just fantastic. Another quick one we did as well. We did when the Dunkirk movie came out that Chris Nolan directed, which I loved it. We just went out and started just practicing, trying different things, but exactly the same lighting on all of these pictures with that one modifier slightly in front, angled down. I then got contacted by some people who were doing a book. Now, this was a local church group, say local, about an hour away. That is local in America, isn't it? Because you guys drive for 6 hours and think nothing of it. But local church group, and they said they're doing a book called Children the Way We Were. And it was to record stories of some of their congregation who were children during wartime. And they said, could we have the picture of that little boy on the staircase on the front cover? Could we have that? And I was like, absolutely you can, but on one condition. I can photograph the people in the book. So that's what we did. We then went along to their church. I started to photograph these people who were kind of like mid-80s, I would suggest, with regards to their age. And they all brought along something from their childhood. Some of them brought photographs to show themselves when they were young. This lady on this next picture here, she also did that. But the little doll's house you can see on her right-hand side there is the exact same doll's house that her father made for her when she was a little girl during the war. And she's still got it, which I just thought was just phenomenal, absolutely phenomenal. But then it kind of progressed. Then it really progressed. Photographing real people as opposed to models and trying to think of a set, some kind of a theme just didn't interest me. But photographing real people did. And then I went onto Facebook and I thought, I want to photograph real veterans. Proper veterans, not these so-called celebrities who just happen to walk on screen for a few seconds and walk off and are now celebrities. I want real celebrities. So I put a message on a group that I found. It was called the Normandy Veterans Family and Friends. And I said, photographer, what I'd like to do is to photograph a veteran to be able to give them a classic, timeless portrait that they can keep and their families can keep forever. Because I was aware that most veterans really, certainly, elderly veterans, have only got pictures that have been kind of grabbed, quick grab when they're at events. And I wanted to be able to present them as my kind of way of saying thank you. Because as a photographer, what else can I do, And when you say, oh, thank you for your service, it just didn't seem enough for me. I want to give them something. So I got introduced to a couple of guys. This guy here called Laurie Whedon. He's so small. He's so small. I'm not tall, but I feel like a giant compared to Laurie. But he was a glider pilot during World War II who landed a glider for the early morning 6th of June from Pegasus Bridge. I mean, just phenomenal. These, like I said earlier on, have you ever photographed celebrities? Yeah, I have these real people here. These are the real celebrities that the actors pretend to be. Do you know what I mean? These are the real people. But what I love about this is I used to have a studio, but studios I found were kind of most of the time lying dormant. So I love photographing on location and the challenges that brings. So you can see here, when I went to go photograph Laurie, the only space we had to do the photo shoot was in the galley, the very narrow galley of his kitchen. Really restricting. But the thing I love about this is the way it kind of pushes you to kind of really get to know your stuff. I mean, simple lighting, you can see on the stand there, just a normal speed light, a 4 AA speed light, battery flash into an octabox there made by Westcott. But I've used umbrellas before, just fantastic light source, really simple. But ordinarily I would have used a large softbox, but with Laurie's kitchen I couldn't do that because I couldn't get it far enough away, but we know that a smaller light source in close will give the same beautiful soft light as a big light source further back, and that's exactly what I did here with Laurie. Now, what I'll do is I'm going to give you a break from my voice just for a couple of minutes, although you will hear my voice still. It's on a video. And I'll show you just a small segment which kind of explains a little bit about the lighting that I'm doing on these folks here. So all I need, when I press this next one, David, if you could just give me the thumbs up that you can hear volume.
Yes.
That'll be perfect. All right.
Cool.
Let's just, I'm going to press play now. So just give me the thumbs up any second now.
Okay. Got it.
Okay, so that's the first step. We've got one side lit, the other side in shadow. But you remember I mentioned that Rembrandt lighting does have that, but there's a little bit of light on here. So how can we now get light on the other side of the face? And this is so incredibly simple. All we need to do is this. We've got our light modifier, okay? If I bring this modifier that way, kind of direction towards the camera, we'll do this. We'll just bring it further forward like so. Now, how far do I bring it forward? It's just trial and error. But the way to kind of check to see how far it needs to come forward is to do this. All I'm going to do is just look straight across. Again, the light hasn't changed the way it is. It's still vertical and going straight across. I'm now literally going to put myself right next to the modifier and look straight across at Anthony. Anthony, almost like draw a line from my face position here straight over to him. Now from this position, if I can see the cheek on the shadow side of his face, it means that this area here of the modifier can as well. All right, so now we've moved it, we'll take a quick shot, and you should now see that we get light on the other side of the face. So that's it, just looking towards me, Anthony. That's it, let's put the focus over your face. Quick shot, and there we go. So as that one comes through, you should see now, yes, we do have one side of the face lit, the other side in shadow, but we're starting to get a bit of light coming through on the other side of the face. All right, so now that we've actually got that shadow and light on one side of the face with a bit on the cheek, this is where it comes to the experimenting. I mean, you could be happy with it just as it is now. That's kind of like cross lighting, and that definitely has its place within photography. But we've said specifically for the pictures we're doing now, we want to try and aim for that Rembrandt-y style of lighting. So, and we're pretty much there, I'll be honest with you. All we need to do now is look at how is our lighting affected by going higher with our modifier and maybe even angling it over. What does that do for it? Well, let's have a quick look at it. I think the first thing we'll do is go higher with the light. I'm going to keep it in exactly the same position. And at the moment, I'm not going to angle it. We'll just go higher, see what that does. So nice and steady, we'll just take this modifier, undo this, and we'll just bring it up like so. All right, so I guess the bottom of this octa here is probably about in line with the height of Anthony's nose from where he's sitting, something like that, all right? So now we'll take a quick photo of that to see how that now is going to change from the picture we've just taken. All right, mate, okay, so looking straight at me, let's just get that focus over your face. And we'll chop the chin down for me. There we go. Okay, 1, 2, 3. There we go. Now, actually, when I look at that on the back of the screen just there, sometimes you can get really lucky. It just so happens that you might not have to angle over the modifier to then get that triangle. It's really interesting how somebody's face structure can really change how the light works on their own particular face, because I think looking at that one there, and if we look at the actual picture we've got here of Anthony on the laptop, we can already see we're getting a triangular pattern of light purely because of maybe how his nose is, how his cheek shape is and stuff like that, and how the light's hitting it, just by going higher. Now, it might be that you're not lucky like that you do get that triangular pattern of light, or maybe you want to have that triangular shape there, that pattern of light, to be maybe bigger or whatever. Now, that's when you're going to start to look at changing the angle. So now that we've done that, let's have a look at how changing the angle and why we change the angle of that modifier has a big impact on the lighting.
So just keeping things really, really simple when it comes to doing the lighting was the big thing for me, because what I didn't want to do when I was taking pictures was be absolutely kind of stressing about the technical side of things, you know. Just doing it nice and simple, but keeping it classic was really, really important. Now, one of the pictures you can see here, another one, it's like on location with a veteran called Reg Charles. You can see, again, it's exactly the same setup. The grey backdrop, I've got the one light slightly further forward, angled down, but also notice that I've got my camera on a tripod. Now, this is something I always do, and some people have kind of said, well, why are you having it on a tripod if you're using flash? Because obviously the flash will just freeze it like that. It's not because of the flash, anything like that. The reason I have it on a tripod is because I'm photographing people here who, I think it's fair to say, don't really want to be photographed. Do you know what I mean? They're not professional models. They're not kind of really that, you know, kind of way inclined, but I think it's really important. So what I do is I always leave my stuff in the car when I first get to somebody's house, but I'll spend a lot of time just chatting with a cup of tea, just getting to know them, get them relaxed. So when I take the pictures, my camera goes on top of the tripod, but you can see, like in the picture here, I never go behind the camera. I'm always above the camera, maintaining that contact, keeping the conversation going. And as I'm chatting away, I might sort of say to David, oh, David, hold on one second, click, carry on talking, talk. So there's never that kind of moment where it just goes like that, and then they're stressing, thinking, uh-oh, any minute now I'm going to have my picture taken. And I just find I get much more better results with that. And this is a self-funded project. It's 39 to 45, obviously because of the years, 1939 to 1945. It's a self-funded project that I'm kind of going out there giving people pictures. Now, most of the times these pictures are always in just a simple mount, which is very, very inexpensive. But this one here for Reg, I gave it in a frame. And the reason I gave it in a frame was because it's no exaggeration when I say that meeting Reg completely changed my life. absolutely changed my life. And a long story short is that I hadn't seen my family for, I've got a big family, 4 sisters, 3 brothers, and I hadn't seen my family for nearly 16 years. Every family has issues. You know, we all know that everyone has issues. They also say that if you wrote down the problems that you're going through at the moment on a piece of paper and put it into a bowl and mixed it all around, and then you all reached in and grabbed somebody else's, you probably want your own back. Everybody's got problems, you know what I mean? But I hadn't seen, I say, my family for a long, long time. But I went to go and see Reg, and I took his picture to him. And when I gave him his picture, I kind of sat and chatted. And he's such a lovely man, really gentle, calm nature, very kind man. And his daughter Sheila was there, who made us a buffet lunch and all this kind of stuff. And I said to Reg, Reg, with all that you've been through all those years ago during World War II, the horrific things that you've seen and experienced, as did all your friends and colleagues, how have you gone through life just being the way you are, just so gentle and kind and nice? And he just sort of said that when he was a young man, he made this determined kind of decision that he would not grow up to be a bitter and twisted old man. So he said he learned to forgive. And I was like, and that, I'll be honest, that really hit home. Do you know what I mean? Here's a man who's been through all this stuff that, you know, touch wood, I hopefully would never have to experience anything like, you know, the likes of Reg have ever experienced. But here he is saying, I learned to forgive. And it really did stick with me. So I'm driving home. It's about a 3-hour drive to see him. And I was just kept thinking about it again and again and again. And it kind of motivated me to get in touch with one of my brothers, Greg, who's in the military. He's in the medical corps. And I knew where he lived, and I managed to get hold of him. And I contacted him, which was just brilliant, just to speak to him again through email initially. And I sort of said, Greg, can I come and take your picture? And he was like, mate, I'd love you to. I'd love you to come take me a picture. So we arranged it. And I went to my brother Greg's house. First time I'd seen him in a long time. And I ended up taking his portrait of him in his uniform. He brought his uniform home, took a quick picture of him. And it was really quite a challenging shot because it was very, very limited space. But if I'm honest, the reason I was doing this was because I kind of wanted my brother to give the picture to my mom, if that makes sense. Do you know, if I said the old thing of an olive branch, handing out an olive branch, hoping that they'll take it, it's a kind of like that kind of gesture to please kind of make contact, but without doing it directly. So did the picture of Greg, I wrapped it all up, got it framed, wrapped it all up, and went to see him on Christmas Eve for Christmas 2019. And Christmas 2018. And when I gave it him, he unwrapped it, and I said to him, Greg, I said, if you want to, you can give this to mom. Meaning, give this to mom. Do you know what I mean? Without me saying, give this to mom. So he did do, and he kind of told me that, oh, she was crying, she was so happy with it, it was lovely. I mean, what parent wouldn't be proud of their kid? Do you know what I mean? In this kind of situation here. But things have progressed since then. Thankfully, things have progressed. So my other brother, Scott, I've got a brother who's got severely autistic. He doesn't speak, but he does Makaton sign language. Hadn't seen him for a long time. And I arranged to go and see Scott with Greg. And I was worried, would he recognize me? But he recognized me, which was lovely. At first, because years ago, I didn't have all this facial hair stuff. So when I've kind of walked in the house, you could see that he was looking at me thinking, who's that? But the minute I spoke, he recognized my voice, and that was it. It was just wonderful. And then the photography show, which is a big show that we have here in the UK. Now it's been running for about 6 years now. I guess it's kind of on the scale, kind of similar to like things like WPPI and that kind of stuff, and PPE. So we did, I went to that and I presented on stage. And the minute I come off stage, I thought, right, that's it. I'm going to go and see my mom, because I knew she was about half an hour from that location. So I drove to her house, knocked on the door, and what can I say? It's just been fantastic ever since. Weirdly, there were no tears, which was kind of interesting. But I kind of said to my mom, this is weird how there's no tears. And she goes, no, there's no tears because this is right. But what was amazing was she knew everything about what I've been doing over the last 16 years. She'd been following me on the blog and everything. She knew it. So when I said, oh, yeah, I do a thing with this guy called Dave Clayton, she went, no, so this thing with a guy called Dave. She goes, oh, is that Dave Clayton? Yeah. And she knew everything. And then when I get text messages off my mom, things like this now, and at 48 years of age, I'm still screen grabbing this stuff because it's been a real life changer for me. It really, really has. So, thankfully, because of this project, other things have happened which I didn't even see coming. But we've got this other guy here, this guy called Harry Billings, who I photographed, and you can see there's Harry in the bottom left there. He recently got awarded what's called the MBE, the Member of the British Empire, by the Queen for this a recent ceremony for all the money that he's raised. Incredible man. He lives in a place called Cornwall on the south coast, beautiful place. But photographing Harry was a challenge because it was real small, tight location when you're photographing him. But again, I love the challenge. I remember when Joe McNally came to the UK once, and I know Joe really, really well. I didn't go to see it because I think I was doing other stuff, but I spoke to people who had been to see it. And what was really interesting was that nobody said how good his pictures were. Obviously they are, but nobody said how good his pictures were. But they all said it was really interesting listening to him kind of working his way through problems and problem solving, which I thought was great. Some of the places I take pictures are really good, like a local pub. That's always very interesting. I like to do that. But this guy here, a guy called Idwell Simmons, amazing guy. He was a 4-6 commando, and his troop were captured by the SS, and they were lined up against a wall in a place called Rots in France, spelled R-O-T-S. And they were told to face the wall, and behind them was a firing squad, and they could hear them getting the guns ready. And just at one split second, Idwell thought, do you know what? No, I will turn around. So he's turned around against what he was told and looked at them. And they're all there with the guns up. But as he looked at them, he noticed in the bottom right-hand corner, one of the men was playing around with a phosphorus bomb that he'd taken off them. And he just screamed at him and said, leave it alone or you'll kill yourself. And they all just stopped. And that's just it. That stopped the whole thing happening. So if he hadn't turned around, they would have been, it's just incredible, absolutely incredible stories. This guy here, Valerian Jaworski, 14 years of age when he is Polish guy, when the Russians came, took him and his family and other members of the families in the village, took him away to a forced labor camp. Just incredible story. He escaped, later fought for the Allies, just the most amazing man. This lady here, Mildred Schutz, when I photographed her, at 18 years of age, she was what they call an SOE. She was basically a spy when she was 18 years of age. Who was going into Germany. She taught to speak fluent German, and she was integrating, and she was involved in sabotage. And I mean, you look at this old lady now, who's 96, you think, I can't believe you did that. It's just amazing. You know, these are the celebrities. And I'm kind of meeting these people so often. Oh, and this lady here, oh my God, Mari Scott. She was on the radio, controlling the radios, relaying messages from the soldiers on the beaches on D-Day morning when they landed on the beaches. She was relaying the messages from the commanders back to Montgomery and what have you to sort of get the command of chain of command going backwards and forwards. Just incredible. Other people I photograph here, but you can see them the sheer pleasure when you give somebody a picture like this. It's so much better. I mean, I'm talking to people who are seriously into the photography here. You know how important a print is. Prints are so important, rather than being on a digital device where people just swipe through. That's nice. That's nice. That's nice. You want so much more of that. And when you give people a print, this is the kind of look that you get. This guy here, Gordon Drabble, he knew my granddad. He served with my granddad during World War II. I could not believe it. And pure fluke that we found out who he was. That my uncle had been watching the television when everyone was going over for last year's 75th anniversary in Normandy. And my uncle was watching the television, and as one of the Royal British Legion took a ship of 500 veterans over. And on that TV footage, he saw one man wearing that beret with the Staffordshire knot on the top of it. Now, my uncle's an author about World War II, and he thought all the members of that particular regiment were no longer alive. But he saw that guy. So we kind of traced it when I got back, went to meet Gordon, and my uncle gave him a copy of one of his books, and they've become great friends, which is just wonderful. I want to show you a video now, a very, very short video that I did with my phone, which is just the reaction that you would all, I think that as photographers, this is the ultimate for me, the reaction that I could ever wish for when I give a picture. This is the reaction that money can't buy. You know, sheer pleasure when you give somebody a picture. And this is a guy called David Edwards, just a wonderful, gentle, kind man. And I've actually, as you can see from the pictures there, I've got to know David really, really well. I've taken him to schools where he's talking to little kids of 6 and 7 years of age and educating them about all sorts of stuff. Just fantastic. But let me just play this video to see how David reacted when I took his picture to him.
It's good.
Nobody's seen it yet, apart from me. All right, and do you want to have a look at it then? Turn it over.
Oh my God. Oh boy, that's a portrait. That is brilliant. Lovely, isn't it? You've even got that cheeky, silly look about it. It's like a painting. It's lovely. Oh, just look at that. I can't get over it. Even your tiny little angle. Look at it.
Nicest photograph I've ever had taken.
He's in tears now.
Oh, bless.
Yeah, look at that. It was worth all the work, wasn't it?
It was worth the second visit.
It was worth the second visit, definitely.
I could see
but you've got his hands as well, is so good.
I used to do a lot of painting. And very often, it's more, you know better than me, it's more important what you leave out than what you put in, isn't it?
That's it.
It's gorgeous.
But look at the arms and the chairs
and
coming through there.
Fades away there, look.
It's lovely.
And there, and your point of interest
Point
comes
of
on there.
interest is your face.
Lovely, yeah.
Money just can't buy a reaction like that. Do you know what I mean? That's just like, wow. Real, just the most amazing man. Jim Hooper, he was a glider pilot at Operation Market Garden. Wow. Do you know what I mean? Jim's lost his eyesight in later life. So in his early 90s, he lost his eyesight. He lives at a place called the Blind Veterans Centre in Brighton, near the coast in the UK. But just such a lovely man. And when I photographed Jim, he wore his original battle dress. It still fitted him. Do you know what I mean? It's just incredible. You'll see this guy in a moment on a very, very short video that we'll end this first part with. A guy called Tom Shaver, who's 96 today. It's his birthday. I'll be calling him after this. But you can see in the bottom picture there, the bottom corner one, that's Tom's front room of his very, very small house. Now, this was probably the most challenging photo shoot I have ever had, because this was the time when I had to, when I set the camera up, I couldn't actually look at the camera when I was doing the photo shoot. It was such a small, tight space that I put the camera on the tripod, but then leaned the camera back. So it was literally resting against the wall. And I was having to go from the side, pressing the remote like this. Thankfully, I was tethered so I could see what was coming through. But this is where technology was a big help with it doing face tracking, because I knew that it had locked onto his face and I could just do that and then hope that it came through fine. And it did. But what a man. When you see that face there, that moustache like that, you think, that's a face that's screaming to be photographed. It's just, what a character. What an amazing man. There's a guy I photographed as well called George Avery. That's the guy on the screen here. Now, George has got severe, progressed Alzheimer's, dementia, as really, to say that he doesn't really he's not himself now would be an understatement. He really is very, very different to what he would be. So when I got contacted by his daughter, who said that she'd love him to be photographed, but was scared because the way he was, for me, that kind of says, we've got to do this. Nobody should be out of bounds for photographing. It was just a different approach when I photographed George. Exactly the same setup, never going down behind the camera, keeping the conversation going. And yeah, he was behaving in a way that you just knew that he had dementia. It was so obvious. But all I did with George was I took more pictures than I ordinarily would. Not blasting him, because that would have scared him or whatever, but just taking time, but taking more. And then later on, this is where my earlier life as a retoucher, when I first started out, came in, because what I did then was I noticed as I looked at all the pictures in Lightroom, you'd have a good expression on one picture, but the pose wasn't so good. Or there'd be a great pose and the expression wasn't so good. So what do? You do a head swap. You find a great expression that makes him look, that's George. That's a normal, happy kind of expression, and put that onto a good pose. His daughter doesn't need to know this, but when you give them the picture, now they've got a picture of their dad, their granddad, that will be there forever. And when they look at that in years to come, they're not going to go, oh, that's when dad wasn't well. They're going to go, that's dad. Do you know what I mean? And she actually did say to me, when I gave her the picture, she said, now I've got my dad back. Just phenomenal, really phenomenal. This guy here, oh God, I get really emotional when I talk about this stuff. Wow, what can I say? Bill Gladden. He was one of the guys that parachuted into Normandy before the beach landings. So he would get in behind enemy lines, set up the signals for the Dakotas and stuff like that. Just bravery before, you just can't comprehend it, can you? Just cannot comprehend it. This picture got me. We had an exhibition last year for my first ever exhibition. And we had the BBC there. It made national press, which was wonderful because it meant more eyes on the veterans, which was fantastic. But seeing this picture here that somebody grabbed of me of Albert Allen, who was a Royal Naval Commando, looking at his own picture, just seemed really powerful to me. I just really, really kind of got me. Ken Doxey, an ex-commando as well. Now, Ken, literally about 2 weeks after I took his photograph, he died. He gained a urine infection, didn't recover from it, and he died. But I know that I had a good time with him. I know that me and Ken had a good laugh, because you can see in the bottom left-hand picture there where I'm just chatting to him, got him joking. It's just a lovely experience. But that picture there where he's holding that little photograph of himself when he was a young man in the Commandos, I just did that with my phone. It just seemed really powerful to see his old hands holding the picture of his younger self. You know, and they say, like, just grab the shot. You know, I mean, I could have got my other camera out, lit it. So it doesn't matter. Just grab the shot. Photos are so damn important. They really, really are. You can see some of the veterans here that when we had the exhibition, I think we had 32 of our veterans present during the actual exhibition, which was just wonderful, absolutely wonderful. I'll kind of wrap up this part in a little bit, but this is the guy that I was kind of talking about at the very start, old Alan Scott, who's the Spitfire pilot. Not been so well lately. He had a bad fall at home where he wasn't. I phoned Alan pretty much every other day. And he'd had a fall out of bed, and he'd knocked himself quite badly, and he lay there for 4 hours. Bad marks on his face. He's paralysed his right hand side because he'd literally just cut off the circulation to his arm while he was lying there. It's slowly starting to come back. But excuse me. But photographing Alan, what an amazing guy. He's the only living Spitfire ace that we now have. Just the most amazing man. But you can see again, taking his picture there, above the camera, never behind the camera. But again, that sheer joy of when somebody gets their picture, it's just the best feeling. It really, really is. But now we're on lockdown. What do you do as a portrait photographer who's photographing World War II veterans when you're on lockdown? How on earth do you keep that creativity going and that enthusiasm? Well, I think I said to people at the start, you start doing stuff like this. I was on a real head scratch thinking, what can I do? Never made Airfix model kits when I was a kid, but now's as good a time as any. So I started making them. Pretty badly. My paint job isn't very good, I must admit, but this thankfully is where Photoshop comes in and I can tidy things up. But I put them all together and I've started to photograph them. Now you can see here, this is the setup that I've got. I wanted to photograph the planes on a tripod with this real sky behind them, but the weather was really bad, very high winds. So I put the sky picture I had on my monitor and photographed it against my monitor. You know, just make life easier. But I'm such a good friend, so close friends with Alan, that I was motivated to do Spitfire pictures. And I just wanted to play around. These are purely for me. Do you know what I mean? These are for me. These are what I'm doing for, because I'm learning stuff, I'm enjoying it, keeping the excitement going. And it makes me think of Alan. So a picture here, this was inspired by the Dunkirk movie. I don't know if you've seen that, but there's a pit when the two Spitfires are flying like this across the channel. It's a beautiful part of a beautiful video footage. I just did that one there. Again, playing around, tidying up the paintwork underneath there with Photoshop. And this one, again, this was a Lancaster bomber on my desk. You know, you just saw my desk there, and I just put it on a stand. But above it, the light that's hitting me now is a video light. And I used the video light to add the highlights onto the Lancaster. And then I put, you know, some sea in it, clouds behind it, and put it around. Just playing around, just having fun with it. But this picture here was one that I did the other day. This is a true story. This is a picture that shows a true story of when Alan was flying Spitfires in the battle for Malta. And at one point, he's having a bit of a dogfight with an ME-109, runs out of ammunition, and the German pilots realised it. And then another ME-109's coming behind him, and there's chasing around, but they just couldn't get him. Could turn too sharp in the Spitfire. So eventually they realised, bit of a stalemate, and he said they literally came alongside him. So the pilots are looking across the sky at each other, really kind of close. He said they waved, waggled their wings, and turned away.
Wow.
Just amazing. I mean, just absolutely amazing stuff. But listen, I'm going to play you a very short video. Then after the video, we'll have a break, have a 5-minute break for a loo break, and I'll go and fill my water up, which I promise you is water. But this is the video that I put together to do with the fundraising. All right, this is why this has all been organised, so that we can kind of just get the message out there. And you know, and if you can donate just the price of a coffee, that's all I'm asking for. I'll play the video and you'll see my friend Tom Schaefer, the guy with the moustache, in this. Alrighty, so that's why, let's just stop that screen share there. That's kind of what this is all about. But there you go. Should we have a 5-minute break, David? What do you reckon? Bit of a break there?
Sure, that's fine.
Okay, so yeah, 5 minutes. So I'll be back on here at 5 past. I'll have a quick break. Go and get some more water. All right, see you in a moment.
Okay.
Hey Dave, how you doing?
Good, how are you, Ralph?
Good, good. Thank you for putting this together. This is really cool.
It is cool.
Yeah, totally. I mean, how did you find him?
I guess I communicated before, and he sent me an email recently just asking if to present a camera call. I was like, I can do that.
Yeah, no, this is very inspiring because
Yeah.
we all have currently little finding something decent to photograph, and if you're at home, you're pretty much running out pretty quick eventually. And
Yeah, I know everyone's doing macro.
yeah, that's pretty much what.
Which I guess they can, there's flowers, and like I said, it is cool to see what he's doing and creating those scenes and some little models.
Yeah. How are you doing with your Olympus camera? I just wanted to go and ask you.
Yeah, it's going well. It is a bit of a learning curve, but I'm trying to use it every day to take some shots with it. But yeah, I like it. I wish I need to get out there and do some birds.
Yeah. So how you feeling?
Yeah, I'm fine because back surgery is scheduled May 21st.
Oh, geez. Okay.
Yeah. So I gotta go through the pre-surgery and interviews and things like that now.
Well, you will be in our prayers. So.
Yeah. Thanks.
Yeah. No, this is cool. I mean, last weekend I only got like the tail end of it, and I didn't have a decent camera. So, and I know it was a little short here too because my wife is baking and stuff, so I had to help her a little bit, and it's beneficial for me too afterwards. So it's always good to do. And, but no, actually, I'm doing good. I mean, I'm working from home pretty much the entire time, but it's never probably. If you asked me this like 3 months ago, I would have said, "Oh yeah, home office is great." Right now, I hate it.
Yeah, it does get a little lonely, and compared to being in an office like setting.
Yeah, I like to socialize and stuff, and after a while, it just gets to you. I'm fortunate that I have work, and that's
good.
But and we always have been doing a lot of home office to begin with, so it really didn't matter.
Right.
But now we really can't go in the building. They locked everything down and stuff. So, but it's okay. And I just like going out for lunches and hanging out and having meetings and stuff. So it kind of misses a little bit. But other than that, we went to. I think you saw the pictures. We went to Fort Washington.
Okay.
You saw that one?
Yep.
So that was actually a really nice place because we went there really, really early on a Sunday morning.
Right.
And there was not a soul inside. And it's a huge park. You do have to walk. There's no cars allowed.
Right.
And it takes you about 45 minutes to easily to walk from the entrance to where the lighthouse is. And where the fort is. And it's still tons of paths you can walk without encountering anybody.
Right.
And interesting enough, the wildlife seems to be having taken over. I mean, we encountered deer who like literally were like 20 feet away from you.
Nice, yeah.
And did not care. And I mean, I unfortunately didn't have the camera in my hand because they were on my back, but you know, it was a pretty cool encounter when you really think about how close they got to you. And they didn't really care. They kind of looked at you and had their ears up and just kind of checked it out. But that was about it.
Yeah, I do. I've been wanting to go there for a meetup. And maybe we'll try to do that sometime this summer, just if it's open and we can get out. So
yeah, this is a nice place to go. It's very open and there's some really nice spots you can take. Yeah, absolutely. And you know, I just picked it because I needed to get out. I needed to get out somewhere where there's nobody around and get some fresh air. And you know, we had no clue what we're actually looking at. And I just looked at the map and says, "Find me a lighthouse," and that's what it came up with. And said, "Yeah, 10 minutes away." And you know, it was pretty good.
Cool. Yeah. I actually used to live down there. So I used to be able to walk in the backyard of my aunt and uncle's house, but right to the park. So I could walk in and, go through the park. So it's cool.
Okay. Keep in touch.
Will do. Thanks, Ralph.
Yeah, no problem.
Cool.
Oh, good.
I'm a minute early. Look at that.
No problem. Whenever you're ready, we're
all right. Cool. Well, I'll share my screen now. So if I do that again, David, just let me know what you can see so that I know everything's all working well. So it should be screen one, and we'll do that. You should see a very handsome fellow.
There he is. Very good.
Yep. All right. Okay. So I thought in this part here, we'll just have a quick run through some random kind of random techniques. I mean, there's so many things that you could go through, but I just thought, we're on lockdown. Let's just throw just a few out there that I've kind of turned to quite a lot over recent times that might come in handy for something that you're doing. The one thing I'll always say, like I mentioned before, when it comes to retouching, is always have that approach of retouching, whether it be Lightroom, Capture One, Affinity, Photoshop, whatever. Always approach it with the mentality of what would happen if. I used to be so rigid when it came to tutorials that this technique does this technique does this, but doesn't mean to say that technique can't also do that. There's all kinds of things that we can find out just by experimenting. You can't break it apparently, so it's always worth just giving it a go. But if I think back to when I first kind of started out, I would buy all the books, all the magazines, watch all the videos and what have you. And I remember when I first kind of started that one of the things that seemed to be really popular was telling people how to whiten teeth. So you'd get a magazine article and there could be 3 pages telling you how to do it step by step, getting things like the pen tool and making a really nice Bezier curve and blah, blah, blah. It just seemed to go on and on and on, like 15 minutes to do teeth. I think I've still got the rest of the picture to do here. But then you kind of think, well, there's a much quicker way. And I'm all for that, ways that are much quicker. So this is one of the ways that I kind of do it if ever I find myself wanting teeth. So just to let you know, this is my friend Dave Clayton, who does not look like this for real, all right? I need to tell you that because otherwise he'll kill me. These are false teeth. This isn't his usual look. It was just going back a few years when we were doing some kind of fun picture, just for the sake of it. But these yellowy kind of teeth that he's got here, the way that I would now whiten these, and this could be anything that you're doing now, targeting certain areas, would be this. I'd get my lasso tool, something really simple like my lasso tool, and I would make a very loose selection around those teeth. No more pen tool, no more Bezier curve, none of that. And then I would literally then go to something like the hue and saturation adjustment layer, the most basic of color adjustment layers you could possibly have. And then where it says masters, I would change that to yellows. And then I would simply get the lightness slider and brighten them. Job done. As quick as that. And I'd be like, oh, How good is that? But the thing is, you are, bear in mind now, you are the person editing here. If the person you photographed has been a bit of a diva, you don't have to go plus. You could also go the other way to make their teeth look even worse and just say nothing. Say you didn't do anything. But it just goes to show how simple things can be. And the way this is working is, for those of you who don't know, is we're making a selection around an area so that Photoshop is only concentrating on the part of the picture within that area. So then when we say change the yellows, it's only going to affect anything within that small area that's yellow. So we brighten it, gets rid of it. I wish I'd known that years ago, rather than all these kind of step by step how to do things. Real simple stuff now. Something else just that I do pretty much on every single photo shoot this is a picture here. This is a guy called John Bell, MBE, who was a pilot in Lancaster bombers during the war. He was part of Bomber Command, so incredible man, very, very tall man as well. So I don't know how he got on in those aircraft, mind you. Incredible man. But when I photograph them, the background that I use, because I'm going into people's houses, I have to be very careful about the size of the footprint that I take up, you know. So the background is a 7 foot high by 5 foot wide. And that's perfect. Certainly if they're standing up, it gives me plenty of space. But if they're sitting down, it can get quite tight. But I wanted these pictures to have that kind of oldish kind of feel to them, that kind of timeless look. And when I was doing the research for all of this, what I noticed was the lighting was a certain way, which is what I'm doing here. But also a lot of the old pictures were like a square crop. So I won't photograph it, giving me a square crop. I'll get it nice and tight so that the money I've paid for my camera, for that really clever and expensive sensor, goes on the person. That's where I want the detail. And then the rest of it I can fix on later on. Now, again, this is for those of you who maybe aren't familiar with this, that some people think, well, I know that, but the crop tool in Photoshop, people think that that's all it can do. It's only there for cropping, when really it's just for changing composition. They should call it the composition tool, I think. So what we can do here is we can change the composition, which is what I do with this picture of John. So I want to give this a square crop. I would literally just get the crop tool and I could drag outwards to add more canvas area. Now, if I want to do it equally either side, I can hold down the Alt key on Windows or Option key on Mac and then do it, and it brings them both at the same proportion. So let's just say that I went for something like that there. Now, we now have these transparent areas either side, which ideally I want to be filled with that background. So it looks like I used a bigger one. And we've got something in Photoshop called Content Aware. Now, that's been around now for a while. It used to be a very small dialog box, which you either pressed it and it worked or it didn't. It was very limited. Whereas over recent updates on the Creative Cloud, they've got this new, much improved one, and it is vastly improved. So this is how you now would fill it in. First of all, I need to tell Photoshop I want these parts filled in. So I'd get my marquee tool. Let's go for the rectangular marquee tool like this, and we'll drag out a selection just to include that transparent area on the left. So you can see now the marching ants going around it. I'll hold down my Shift key so I can add another selection, and we'll include that part over on the right-hand side there as well. This time now what I'll do is I'll go to the Edit menu, and here we have Content Aware Fill. And it brings up the new dialog box, which gives you so much more control. On the left-hand side, this is your original picture. On the right-hand side is the preview of what you should be getting. Now, the great thing about this here is you'll see this green overlay. That's basically where Photoshop is saying, right, you want all this area covered with green. I'm going to use that to fill in these blank areas. Now you can see here it's got a little bit on John, which you wouldn't want, and thankfully it's not used it. But if you did find that Photoshop added it onto bits that you thought, no, don't include that, you can just paint them away so it doesn't include them at all. So you just say now, use this green area. And you can see over on the left-hand side, it does a fantastic job. Now, you don't have to just keep using a green background. You might be a landscape photographer or whatever, and the green really wouldn't show up maybe so well. Over on the right-hand side where it says color, you can just click on that and change it to a color that will show up. But you can see now, fantastic job. Now, my only tip with this as well would be when it's processing this, you'll notice the spinning wheel of death in the bottom right-hand corner. It's very tempting when you see the preview to go, yes, and click OK. Try not to. Wait until the spinning wheel of death has gone and then click OK, because I have had all sorts of issues with it crashing and all sorts. If you do it when the spinning wheel of death is there. It's not there now, so we can just click OK. go straight into Photoshop and bang, and it's give me a nice background. Obviously, you've got to be careful if there's any repeating kind of patterns on the background there. But if it was me, let's say just these areas up here as possible repeating areas, I would get something like the patch tool, which I love, from the toolbar over here. We'll zoom in and you can just make very loose selections of them, drag them, and Photoshop will kind of fill those areas in just to take out that repeating pattern kind of area. But that's how I would generally go about using the crop tool to change the composition, because ultimately when I'm doing the photo shoot, I want all the money that I've earned and spent on this camera to go on to John, as opposed to just a bit of grey. That's what I want to do with that one. All right, so that's that one there. I had a group the other day ask me about black and white conversions. Now, black and white, there are books on black and whites. There's so many ways we can do it. You know, there's all sorts of stuff. I used to use a plugin called Silver Effects Pro, I think it was called.
Yes.
Which was brilliant. I no longer have that. But I just thought I'd quickly show you how I do my black and white conversions, because I just do them really, real simple. So let me just get rid of that and get rid of that. The first thing I'll show you, though, first of all, real simple. And this is also where in those plane photographs, those aircraft photographs I showed you, where you can see the sun coming in. This is how I made the sun. Really simple. We've got a blank layer. I'm going to get a brush, a normal, let's go for a normal soft brush. Let's go for, yeah, a soft brush like that with a white foreground color. And I'll just make it about this kind of size just here and press down. Is that completely soft? Let's have a look. No, make it nice and soft and press down like so. I'm going to zoom out a little bit now. Then I'll get my free transform tool. So we get the transform handles going around it, and I'm going to drag it out nice and big like this. So we'll do that, let it process it, and then bring it forward. I get my move tool and I'll just drag it up to the top corner. Sometimes I might do that if I've used another light where we're getting a little bit of this light coming around the side here. For me, I like to kind of look at a picture and go, well, why is that there? Where's it coming from? So sometimes I might just put a fake light in. But it also makes a great sun if ever you're looking to do sun pictures. But for the black and white, rather than me using a plugin these days, I literally just press D on my keyboard to get black and white in the foreground and background color, and then come over to the adjustment layers. And here we've got a gradient map. And most times out the bag, the minute you click on that adjustment, it'll give you a pretty good black and white. You know what I mean? It's not going to be the same for every picture, but again, you're not having to stick at this. You can go in and dive in there and make changes to it. And the way we do that is in the properties here, you can see the gradient. If I click on that gradient, it brings up the gradient editor. Now here we've got the gradient here, where we've got the black area, the white area, and we've got the grays in between. If I just press down on one of those points, you see we now get this third point here. And that controls how the blacks, the whites, and the grays all kind of blend in. So I could now start to play around with this and say, well, let's just tweak it a little bit, bring that over just a little bit. I might want a little bit more grey on there. I might want the whites to be a bit more. I want the blacks a bit more, and so on. So you can start to tweak it just by playing around with these simple little sliders here. So it's definitely one worth playing around with. And it's one where you kind of have that what would happen if attitude. And if all goes wrong, just cancel it and then start again if you don't quite hit the mark. But that's just a simple one there, simple black and whites. It might work with something that you're doing. Now, one thing I love to do, I absolutely love to do is, remember I said about my wartime project, the colouring is one of the things that I really like to work on to give it that final kind of look. This is how I do my colouring. And again, I used to use a plugin for this. I think it was Nick Colour Effects. Nick used to get quite a bit of money out of me. Nick Colour Effects Pro 4, for example. Click, 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 click. Now, the reason I no longer use plugins really is because I found that my knowledge within Photoshop just dropped. Because I was very much reliant on click, click, click. And then when people say to me, how did you do that? I'd go, well, it's very difficult. You need to do this and go into the curves. And I was lying, basically. So I didn't want to tell them I was relying on a plugin. But this is how I colorize pictures. And if anybody out there has got Photoshop CS6 or newer, you've got this. So for those of you who don't know about this, this is called something called lookup tables. Oh my God, outstanding. Absolutely outstanding. And the only reason I know about these is because I was literally diving around Photoshop after an update once and thinking, what on earth is that? This little 3x3 grid that we can see in the top right-hand corner here on the second row, far on the right, a 3x3 grid. Now, lookup tables have been brought into Photoshop at CS6 and newer, they've been brought over from the film industry. This is what they use to colorize movies. Lookup tables, 3D LUTs, they call them. And I'm going to show you how you can use them. Because when you first use them, you'll think, I hate that. That's horrible. I'm never going to touch that. But bear with me. If I now click to add this lookup table adjustment here, you'll see that nothing happens first of all. But in the properties, we've got 3 menus. The bottom 2, you're never really going to bother with because it kind of gives you a really abstracty, weird, crazy kind of looks. But the top one is where you want to play. So if I just click on that, it brings up lots of preset ones that are already in there. So for example, if I was going to colorize this picture of Harry Billinge, this is how I would do it. I would first of all, because I created a recipe, I would click on tension green. But the minute you look at that, you think that's horrible. What on earth would you possibly want to use that for? But the great thing about this is we're using an adjustment layer. And because it's a layer on its own, this means we have access to opacity. We could use blend modes. We could really play around with this now to really give it the look that we want, that suits our look. But all I'm going to do in this time here, I'm just going to get the opacity. That's all I'm going to do, the opacity, and take it down to 20%. It's like everything in Photoshop, anything in retouching, it's the small things you do that make the big difference. So I'm going to do that. But I'm now going to add some more, all right, to make my own recipe for the look that I want. So I go back to my lookup table adjustment layer and I click to add another one. I got my properties, I go to the top menu, but this time I'm going to choose one called Edgy Amber. Again, horrible. Could work really well for a sunset. Who knows? On the right kind of picture, you just never know what would happen if. But this one, no, it's too strong. But I will just lower the opacity down on this one to 20%. And I'll keep adding a few more. And this is exactly how I came up with the look with my own wartime veteran pictures. There's one in here called Edgy Amber. Not Edgy Amber, Foggy Night. I love that one. I'll take that one down to maybe 15%. But here's what I also do. If I click to add another one, where we've got all these presets in, at the very, very top, it says Load 3D LUT. Now, you can actually add in your own. So these could be ones that maybe you've purchased, but they can also be ones that you've made yourself, because you might go through this whole process and not want to have to repeat it every time. You can save your recipe as a single LUT. So you could just click it and add it. You could also, if you've got Premiere Pro, the video editing software, you could, as I've done, create looks from movies, exact same coloring from movies and TV programs. And what I did was I watched the film The Darkest Hour, which was all Winston Churchill. I framed it, took a screen grab, put that on the timeline in Premiere, and I also put one of my own pictures on the timeline. And there's a new thing in Premiere called Color Match, and it literally is just pressing one button and it will try to match the color from the movie onto the picture that you've also put in. And when it does that, it creates a LUT, which you can then export and use on your own pictures. It is just phenomenal. Now, I'm going to send an email to you, David, with some links in so that people afterwards can click and watch videos on my YouTube channel that show them exactly how to do this as well. All right.
Sounds good.
But here, I'm going to navigate now to where I've got this 1940s LUT that I created from the film The Darkest Hour. So I've got them over here. Let's have a quick look. Creative 3, look files, this one at the top. So I can click on that and you can see your own ones can just be added in, click, bang, there you go. You could also add them into that menu if you wanted to, but I'm just showing you how you can also navigate for them. Last one, take it down to 20. And then last thing I'll do is I'll just desaturate it a little bit with my black and white adjustment, black and white in the foreground and background color, go to the adjustments and add that gradient map to get that nice black and white. And I'll just knock that down to 20%. Now, be the typical Virgo, let's keep things nice and tidy. So the top one is selected, hold the shift key down so the bottom one is selected, and then we'll just go to the menu here and choose new group from layers, and we'll call this LUT for look up tables. So you can see now the before and the after, the before and the after. So you can start to add in your own look. Now, that's all well and good, but the only thing is there, you might not like the way, if you're using this on a portrait, you might not like the way that it makes the skin look. So you might want to do something about that. And this is how you can do that. Those of you familiar with retouching in Photoshop, you'll think, well, you can use a layer mask. So what I did here was I used a layer mask. I then got a black brush And let's just say, for example, that I wanted to lower the effect by maybe half. Half would be fine. So I would probably, before, I would have changed the opacity of my brush to 50% and then painted it off Harry's face. The only problem with that is if I'm sitting there doing this, if I lift my Wacom pen or cursor or whatever off the pad and then carry on going back down again and start, taking it all off, there's every chance that I'm going to overlap on an area that I've already painted over. So what that means is I'm going to remove the look more on some parts of his face than on others. So it wouldn't be consistent. If I lower the opacity of the layer, that's going to reduce it off his skin, but it's also going to reduce it everywhere else. So I need to, how can I control it just for his face? And this is how I did it. Black brush, in the options at the top of the screen here, which you get for every tool that you go to use, leave the opacity at 100, full strength, complete black. And then what we're going to do, I'll do it quickly, but just show you, we'll come in and we'll paint the look totally off Harry's face. Now I'm spilling over, but we're just doing this for speed's purposes. I can remove it off Harry's face like this. It's amazing when you see the skin tone, the real skin tone without the colouring on. It looks like it's, why? It looks a really funny colour, but that's the real colour. So we've got that there. Now that's removed it completely. And if we look at the layer mask, we can see that's what we've got there. Now let's just paint in a little bit more on that bit and that bit there. So we can see we have removed it completely. However, if I want to remove it now by half or whatever amount, in the properties for the layer mask, we have the density slider. That controls how dense black is on the layer mask. So I can now say, well, I don't want it to be pure black. I want to reduce it a little bit. So if I reduce that density of that black there and maybe take it down to 50%, we know that black completely hides an effect, but anything less than, or anything brighter than pure black will start to reveal the effect. So now we're going to see half of the effect coming through. Does that make sense? So now let's have a look. If I just click on the layer mask, we've now reduced it by half. So we go before and after. So I've reduced now the effect completely. I could, if I wanted to, let's have a look at that layer mask again. I could take it even less. So I want even less of the color on it, or less of the color showing through. But if I want all of it showing through, sorry, if I don't want any of it showing through, we'll go for complete black. And I can control how much I want that coloring showing his face purely by moving this density slider. But the great thing is, it's an even removal across his face rather than being more in one area than another. All right. But I will send you a video through with a link so you can see that again. Okay. So that's that one there. Now, recently I went to an event in London, which was at the place called the RAF Club in Mayfair in central London. Beautiful, beautiful place. And it was for a lunchtime get together with some veterans as a thank you for all the work that people raising money for them have done, and also just to sort of celebrate veterans. And I was said, you know, that when I was there, they said, oh, you can take some portraits. So I took minimal kit. So I had one flash, one lens, my 55mm lens, thinking I'm only doing portraits. But then at the end of the day, they said, could we have a group photo taken? And I'm like, I haven't got a lens wide enough and I can't get far enough back. What on earth are you thinking? And I can't not do it, because how often do you get this many veterans together? And, oh, you know, so then you think, right, okay, thinking on your feet, we'll do a panorama. And this is what, again, you can do this in Photoshop, you can do it in Lightroom, but I just thought this was so, so clever the way that this picture here ended up being made, literally by having just a series of pictures like this. I just thought, what a great use, because I used to think that panoramas, landscapes, couldn't possibly do it with people, but it works so well. So I'll just quickly show again, for those who don't know, I've got the pictures that go to make it up. We've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 pictures, and I'll click on the first one and highlight the next one. So they're all now highlighted. Now I could send these into Photoshop to do it, but I could also do this in Lightroom, and Lightroom will do it in the background and allow me to carry on doing other stuff, which is really clever. You might hear the fans kick in on your computer while it's going crazy, but it can do that. But let's have a look here. Let's see what it does. Photo, photo merge, and we'll choose panorama. And when this comes up, it's quite a basic box we've got here, but don't be put off by how basic it is, because it's so powerful. But already, look, it's, I mean, that took moments, didn't it? And it's already done a good job at bringing them together. But we can also say fill edges and all these, and see how it does that. It's already, look how quick that is. I think that's just insanely good. And then literally, once you've got that, don't touch anything else, just click on merge. And then you'll see in the top left-hand corner here, it says creating panorama. It's now doing it in the background. My microphone may have picked up on the fans kicking in on a computer, who knows? But that is now processing that picture, those 5 pictures with all those different faces in and all that intricate background to try to make a panorama. And this is what I was so hoping. I thought, yeah, this will be fine. We can do this, no problem. Driving home thinking, I hope this works. Because if this doesn't, I'm never going to get a chance to do this again. Now you can see the progress at the top. Bear in mind, these are big RAW files here, 16-bit RAW files. I'm using a Sony, so I think they're like 42 megs each, so I think something like that. So there's a lot of processing going on there, but any second now we should see this coming through. So if anybody knows any good jokes, they could tell us a good joke while we're just waiting. Oh, no, we're getting a bit of movement, going backwards and forwards, and there we go. So it's just done it. So now it's just created that. Just phenomenal. Absolutely phenomenal, I think, how it does it. Now, obviously, then we can send this over into Photoshop, do some tweaking, clone out the bits of the tables in there. But the heavy lifting, phenomenal. I just think that is so clever. And obviously, my final picture was that one there where we got all the other stuff in there. So that's that. I thought was just brilliant. Another picture I want to show you is this one here. And this is of a guy called Scott Kelly, who's a beefeater at the Tower of London. This is, you know, he's a military guy. This is what he now does. And I want to show you how I took this picture, because bearing in mind, when I did this picture, I'm still using the same background that I do when I go and photograph the veterans, which is 7 foot by 5 foot. And this thing here that he's carrying, he'll kill me if I don't remember the name of it, but we'll call it a spear. I know it's not called a spear, but we'll call it a spear. It's well over 7 foot high. So when I first take his pictures, this is what I've got to work with. So I'm thinking, right, what can we do? I know there's some good stuff in Photoshop that could really help me out here, right? So what I did was this. There was a girl called Jane who was with me. She's a good friend of Scott's, and I got her to stand behind the background. It's a very, very light background. So camera's on the tripod. I take a picture of Scott, telling him to stay exactly still. I take a picture. I then tell Jane from where she's standing, just grab the handles of the background and just go vertical as high as you can, which she did do. So this was the first shot and this was the second shot. So now here's what we can do with this. I'm going to highlight both of these images here, and we're going to go to Photo, Edit in, Open as Layers in Photoshop. So that's going to send them both into Photoshop, not in separate tabs. They should both be in the same tab, one on top of the other. So I'll just put those in there. Let's have a quick wait for the next one to come in. So there we go. They're now both in Photoshop. It'll just finish doing the spinning wheel of death any second. And there we go. All right. So here's what we have. We've got first picture, second picture. Now, this first picture here, there's bits that I don't want to be in it. So, in fact, no, hold on one second. Hold on. I can do more in Lightroom before I even do that. Let me go back to Lightroom quickly, because I can get my crop tool and take out the side bits. I'm not interested in those because I've already showed you I can extend the background later. So let's just get rid of that side there. And on this picture here, we'll also get rid of the side on there and the side on there. Oh, a bit more like that. Then I'll highlight them and then I'll send them over into Photoshop as layers. So I don't need those side bits. We know we can do that later on using the crop tool and get Photoshop to use the content aware fill and what have you. So once it brings them into Photoshop, there's a few things I can do, which I used to have to do manual, lining things up. But now Photoshop can really help me out so that I can do what I want to do, which is the main retouching part. So we've got that picture and that picture. What I'm going to do first of all is, because you can see they're not lined up, I'm going to highlight them both in the layers panel and come into here and we're going to go to Edit, Auto Align Layers. That's the first thing we're going to do. And I'll leave it at default, won't touch anything else, just leave it on auto and click OK. Give it a few seconds and Photoshop should now line them up. So it's not done too bad a job like that. Now here's what we're going to do. Again, I'm going to highlight them both, and now I want to try and blend them in. And this could take a long time doing this correctly if you're doing it with layer masks and brushes and so on and so forth. But now look, and I hope this works now that I've built it up. We're going to go to Edit, Auto Blend Layers. We'll click on Auto Blend Layers. At the bottom here, if these aren't ticked, definitely tick them. Seamless tones and colors. This is where the heavy lifting would be hard work to do this, but we can put a tick in there. Content aware fill transparent areas. Let's put it in, click OK, and then keep my fingers firmly crossed. It's either going to work or we're going to jump very quickly to the next picture. Let's just see what that one does there. So heavy lifting, obviously these are quite, file size is quite big on these, but this is going to get me to a good point, hopefully. Any second now, he says. Oh no, I haven't done. I haven't done something. I haven't. So you don't have to be clever to do this. I have missed something out. So I'm waiting for Photoshop to mess this up to show if you're going to do this, don't do it this way. But I'm going to go back. All right. Right. Yeah, you'll see now what I need to do. Right. Let's just show you. Let me show you. Right, they're lined up. Right. Let's just look at that bottom picture there. I'm going to get my crop tool. I don't need the top bit. Let's get rid of that just there. Right. Don't need that. Now let's turn that layer on. Oh no, hold on a second. Don't want to do that. I'm going to get my marquee tool on this bottom one, and I'm going to take out that top part just there. Don't need that. If I turn on the top layer, I don't need the bottom bit. So we'll cut that out as well, like so. So now we've got that from the bottom picture and that from the top picture. Right, now we're working. Now we're working fine. Highlight both of those, then go edit, and then go auto blend layers and click OK. Right, okay. It's a good job this isn't in front of a live audience, isn't it?
Of course.
This is pre-recorded. Okay. Yep. All right, so Photoshop will now do its heavy lifting, and fingers crossed, all should work. And you'll see that the main thing I'd be focusing on was how is it going to blend the two backgrounds together, because we've got shadow and highlights and all sorts of stuff on that background, because they're obviously at different heights. So let's have a quick look at what it does. I mean, that's not bad. You've got to say that isn't bad. There's this line here that I was concerned about, but that's done a good job. Even joining up the spear has done a great job on that. It's also done a good job with the clothing. You wouldn't know that was there, but these areas here, very easy to get rid of using things like the patch tool. We can come in there and start to kind of tidy that up. But that I thought was amazing. But it literally was one of those things where you're kind of thinking on your feet at the time, thinking, oh, what can I do here? What would happen if I did this? So I love that. All right, so that's that one. Okay. Replacing skies. Let me just show you this one, replacing skies. I'm not going to go too much because I want to send you some links, but let me just show you a real simple one for replacing skies. So let's just say we've got this picture here and I want to put this different sky into it, just as an example. Now, there's lots of ways we can do selections in Photoshop. They're advancing it all the time. There's the artificial intelligence now that's being built into Photoshop is very good. We've got like select. We've got this thing here now called select subject. We've even got the select object tool within the toolbar as well. Very, very good. But again, not on every picture. It's getting better every time, but not necessarily good in every picture. But we don't have to always rely on the new technologies to be able to help us out with something like this. Because if I wanted to maybe reduce the background here or get rid of the sky to put a new one in, I could actually come to the tool of the layers panel. Let's just unlock that layer for a second. And if I double click to the right-hand side of where the name is, we get the layer style dialog box. And on the blending options at the bottom here, we've got the blend if sliders. These are incredibly powerful. They are very, very good. Let me just show you now. If I go, by default, it says gray. If I change it to blue, because predominantly that's what we're looking at here with the sky, we're looking at blue. We've got two parts, this layer or underlying layer. Well, in the layer stack, there's only one layer. So we're going to use this layer. And if I click on the far right-hand side where the blues are, I don't have to worry about making fancy selections because it just gets rid of it. I'm like, wow. That for me was like, that's good. That's really, really good. The great thing as well is sometimes when you do this, you might find that the edges, if you only just use the slider on its own like that, the edges can almost appear quite crispy and they don't look so good. But what you can do also is with when you actually do, let's just bring this into here. When you have these little points that you move backwards and forwards to help it to kind of blend in and soften and everything just look kind of cool and good, you can split this marker by holding down the Alt key on your Windows machine or Option key on Mac, and you click and drag, and it separates the two. So that helps the transition there. Rather than it being like a severe cutout, it kind of helps you to feather the edge, is what we do on most kind of cutouts. Allows you to do that there. But that's kind of cool there. You can see we've cut that out. So all I would do is just get the background. I'll just drag it over, example, let's say. could put it into there, and then I can just move it underneath like so. So we get our new background in. So just a nice, simple one. I don't know if that's, so lucky I could move it around just a touch, resize it, but you can see it does a pretty damn good job. So I would suggest that while we're on lockdown and we're restricted, if you haven't played with blend if sliders, play around with them. You might remember the Lancaster bomber picture that I did, that you saw, that was kind of coming up, and the moon, and then there was the reflection of the moon on the water. How did I do the reflection of the moon on the water? Well, I had the water, I put a splodge of white paint on it in Photoshop, and used the blend if slider to make it blend off a little bit, so you could see some of the water coming through and some of the white remaining, and it made it look like the reflection on the water. It was just, and I'd never done that before. It was just experimenting. That's all it was. So that's that. And I think probably let's just do one more. I'll do one more, David. You all right with that? Just do one more.
That's fine.
Okay, one more thing. Replace the sky, clouds. Right, okay. One of the pictures that I want to do is I want to do a picture of an aircraft looking down on the aircraft, coming in, almost like it's coming across the countryside. You know, it could be a Spitfire, it could be whatever, but I want to do one looking down. But I haven't got a picture from up above looking down through the clouds. So I think, well, how can I recreate that? And again, it's just having that what would happen if kind of mentality. And this kind of leads into also another way that we can use the blend if slider, because there's so many different things you can do with the same tools on different pictures. It's just amazing. But let me just show you how I'm kind of thinking. I haven't done the picture yet, but how I'm thinking this could work. I'll add some clouds first of all. I'm going to add a blank layer. And again, this is just something I'm doing for fun, but it's amazing how these techniques can come in useful later on. I'm going to press D on my keyboard to get the black and white default there. And then we're going to go to Filter, Render, and then Clouds. And this is what Adobe think clouds look like. They don't look like that where I live. Might be different where you are, but they certainly don't look like where I live. But what we can do here is I can get my marquee tool and make a little selection in the middle there, let's say, something like that. Hold down my Control or Command key and press J to put that selected area up onto its own layer. And you can see now, if I just turn that one off, you can see that's where it is. All right. So, in fact, I don't even need that big one now. We'll go to this one. So now I'm going to make this look like clouds, or as near as damn it. So I'll get my free transform. We'll zoom out a little bit more like that. And then we'll get my Shift key and Alt key and drag it out nice and big. Something like this. So it's starting to look a little bit like clouds. But for my picture, I want to be looking through the clouds down at the ground below. Blend if sliders. What would happen if? All right. So let's have a look. If I double click on the right-hand side of the cloudy layer there to bring up the blend if sliders, we've got this layer, an underlying layer. Well, I want to get rid of the darker parts and the gray kind of parts on this layer. So I'll use this layer slider and I'll start to drag it across. And the more I drag it across, the more we start to get that cloud area starting to break up. So we could go for something like that, for example. Now you can see now what I mean about how those edges are really sharp and that just does not look real. Certainly not here. That just does not look real. But now if I do that trick with the Alt key and split this little slider, so if I hold it down and split it, we can now start to blend it. See how it's now softened that area off? So now rather than it being like a jaggedy, fake looking cloud, we can start to make it look a little bit more. Let's zoom out a touch. We can start to play around with it just a little bit more to kind of get something like that. And again, this is just me experimenting while I'm on lockdown, thinking, what can I do there? What can I do there? And then click OK. Now that looks a bit maybe two-dimensional, but again, it's the small things in retouching that make the big difference. So what could I now do that could make it look a little bit more realistic? Well, I'll zoom out. I could get my free transform. And while I've got my free transform, I could maybe right-click and use perspective. So let's click on perspective, zoom out a touch more. And now I can click and I can lift the clouds up in a bit of a perspective to change how they kind of look like so. Just to lift them a little bit. So it gives that much more kind of realistic, kind of three-dimensional kind of feel to it. So for me at the moment, this is kind of work in progress, but just by experimenting and having that attitude of what would happen if, there's definitely something to work on here, I think. And I think to my kind of finish it all off, I can drag those around as well. To try and finish it all off, I'd probably do maybe a little bit of dodging and burning to brighten up parts of the clouds and darken some down, so it does give that bit more depth and dimension to them. But I think for starters, certainly not that bit there, but you know what I mean. I think that's kind of looking all right. I'm quite happy with that. So that's all I wanted to show you, really, when it came to Photoshop. It's just to kind of encourage you to have that what would happen if kind of attitude. But let me just jump out of the sharing. Stop share. There, dive into there. And I'm back with you. I'm now back with you. So, David, if anybody's got any questions.
Yeah, please, anybody have any questions? Glenn's here to help out. I definitely appreciate that, Glenn. It was very nice to give a Photoshop tutorial. And
I hope it's useful. It's just, you know, just to encourage you. Do you know what I mean? There is so much you could do, but Photoshop's one of those things you either love it or you don't. And it's, I know, even as somebody who does this day to day, there's only so much you can take. Do you know what I mean? Otherwise, it's like, well, you lost me. And that's no disrespect to anybody. That's just human nature. You know what I mean? It kind of gets a little bit overwhelming. So hence why I've got a bookshelf full of books to help me to remember. I even refer to my own books sometimes. That's how bad it gets.
All right.
Actually, thank you very much for this really incredible demonstration. I mean, I'm, you know, kind of hovering through Photoshop as good as I can. But it's very inspiring that you say, well, you know, you kind of have to experiment, you try a little bit here, and then you come up with these, you know, really interesting ways of manipulating without having to like really complicated, you know, tutorials, what takes you forever to follow them. And very inspiring. Thank you very much. And I mean,
no, you're welcome. Thank you very much for the kind words. But I mean, just to kind of follow on from that, is you get so many people. It's he'll say that, you know, you may say you do something one way, then somebody will say, well, you could have done it this way, or you could have done it this way. And they're dead right. Yeah, you could do it that way. But you know what? Who cares? Who cares how you do it as long as you get the result you want? And if it ends up taking you longer, then so be it. I think the only time to really worry about how long it's taking you to do something is if you're on the payroll and you've got to get that finished picture out there. But really, just enjoy the process. And one thing I always tell people is try to learn maybe 3 or 4 techniques that do the same thing. Let's say if you wanted to sharpen eyes, learn 3 or 4 ways to sharpen eyes, because the one way that you really like, it isn't going to work on every picture. So you need to be able to have something else you can turn to work on them as well. So, you know, while we're on lockdown, say, right, this coming week, I'm going to learn sharpening eyes. The next week I will learn cutouts. The next week I will do this. And then that's how I did. And that's how it kind of helped to sort of stick into my head.
That's what I'm currently doing too. Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah, Glenn, this has been very informative for me. I've been, since in lockdown, I've asked my son and my daughter and my nieces to send me pictures of the grandkids and of the great nieces and nephews, and then change the backgrounds on them to where they're in some other type of.
I bet that's been so easy as well, Ralph, hasn't it?
And so I did a couple and stuff, and the perspective and all that tool, I've never even thought about even using that. So I'll try to move into that as well. But then I'll create some of these things and I'll send them back to the nieces and the nephews and my son and daughter, and then they'll say, "Wow, how did you do that?" Well, it's.
Now, tell them some really long-winded way that it was all very mathematical and all that kind of stuff, and they'll be like, "Wow, you're amazing." But when you put a new floor in, because sometimes I might have like somebody on grey, and you put like a texture to make the floor, just using that perspective tool, then just to lift that texture. It's the small things that make the big difference. But
absolutely.
Yeah, but always tell them it took a long time.
Well, I should tell them that, because otherwise they'll bombard me with all these.
Exactly. Yeah. You could really shoot yourself in the foot there and end up having loads of pictures being sent to you.
Very much, Glenn. Thank you.
You're welcome, Ralph. Cheers, mate. Well, I will, like I said, I will send an email to David with links in for stuff as well. So, because there's my YouTube channel, there's some other people that I do a lot of work with that have got some great channels. It's all free content, and what better time for us to learn while we're off, you know, doing this kind of
share the information. Appreciate that.
Cool.
Appreciate your time. And
now, I can see a chat button popping up here. Is that questions, is it?
Yeah, there's a chat. I'm not sure if there's questions. Mostly thank yous.
Oh, wow, lovely. That's very kind. Thank you.
Yeah.
I'll never look at dolls' houses the same way.
Right.
Listen, I actually still do get junk mail coming through the post, and it's addressed to me. And you think, oh, what's this? And you open it up, and it's like from a doll's house brochure. And like, my wife's like, what on earth have you been doing?
Yeah. Also, I just want to to tell people, if you are on mute, I've muted a lot of people. If you want to speak, just press the space bar. Press and hold the space bar so you can speak. If you want to do that, or
do that. Is that what you do? Is it hold down a space bar?
Yeah, that is one of the options. If you're on mute and you want to speak, you don't want to put you completely off.
Well, you know what? If nobody does have any questions, we won't go for that awkward silence moment where we see Tumbleweed going across the screen. We won't do that.
Okay.
But if anybody does have any that they think of afterwards, feel free to drop me an email. It's a real simple email address, just glyn@glyndewis.com, and I've got all the time in the world to reply to you. So I will do that.
I appreciate your time again, Glenn, for this, and we're almost up to 2 hours, and it's been great.
You're welcome. You're welcome.
Yeah, we definitely also to remind people about the donations. You want to give a little plug for that again?
Yeah, it's virginmoneyGiving.com/help-veterans, and I'll send that over in the email, Dave. But like I said, if you can, and I know at the moment there's lots of fundraising going on, understandably, and what I don't want this to be is another fundraising thing.
Right.
But if you kind of think, well, I would have gone out for a coffee today, and that would have cost me $2.50.
Yeah, it's $5 here for Starbucks.
Is it really?
Oh yeah. Yeah,
Blimey.
$5 for.
Okay, $5 then. Bring it on. Even better. Nice one, David. You just dropped everybody in it then. Could have got away with that.
Right. That's true. We call it $5.
$5. Okay. But if you do, if you don't, you don't. It's just the thoughts there. So. But it's been, I have thoroughly enjoyed this. What I love about this is it's the next best thing to a live audience, isn't it? Being in front of you, because I can see those of you who've got your video cameras on, you can see reactions, and it's all sorts of stuff. What's really funny is the night when you get people who forget they've got their video cameras on, and they get up and they start doing stuff, and you're thinking they really shouldn't be doing that with the video on.
Right.
But everyone at 10 o'clock in the morning, everybody I can see here has been fine. Well, there's been none of that. It's all been fine. So.
That's good.
All right.
If you ever get the chance to get up to the Washington, D.C. area, it'd be great to do a photo walk.
I have got to come there because there's some friends I've made, a family of friends I've made over in Washington that I've been promising to come and see for ages. There's a very young kid, he's 7 years of age, and I sent him a couple of my books because he's on Photoshop, and I just sent them, and I've got to meet them. So, and they're in Washington. So cool.
Yeah, we're in the area, so we can, set something downtown D.C. or any of the parks around.
That'd be great. I will definitely bear that in mind, because once this is lifted and we can let the dust settle, I mean, I should have been in the States in September, but that isn't going to happen now.
Yeah, probably not.
It'll be next year, but I will definitely be over. Washington's on the hit list.
Sounds good.
So
that's good, Glenn.
All right, folks, it's been lovely to meet you. Keep safe and well, and fingers crossed this will all be behind us sooner rather than later. And something we can tell the family about in years to come, isn't it? That we were there.
Right.
We were doing it. Did our bit. We stayed home and all that kind of stuff. So,
right.
But thank you very much for inviting me on, and enjoy the rest of the day.
Yeah, you too. Take care.
All right. Cheerio, folks.
Thank you.
Bye bye.
Everyone.
Hey, David.